Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May, and today we have with us Sue Thomas. She is a sugar-free coach, which I am super excited about having her here to talk about all of things sugar and breaking free from it, because it can definitely have a stronghold on our lives. So cutting back on sugar improves our overall health, which can definitely have positive effects on our mood, energy levels, and hormone balance. It could also lead to better sleep quality, and it seems to be quite obvious, but in case it needs to be mentioned, beneficial for our weight management. A reduced sugar lifestyle will also help to eliminate joint pain, improve cardiovascular function, and promote better intestinal health. Making small changes over time can be more sustainable and effective than trying to make big changes all at once. So we're definitely going to talk about that. So by providing practical guidance and support, Sue helps many individuals break the cycle of sugar consumption and improve their overall being long term. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So tell us about your story and how you came to be passionate about this little caveat of healthcare specifically.
So if I take you back to 2009, and I was a personal trainer at the time, and I had a streptococcal knee infection, which meant that I ended up on about 25 days of very high dose antibiotics, which at the time I wasn't a nutritional therapist at the time. I didn't understand what that was going to do to my long-term well-being. And so fast forward to 2013, and I was still personal training, but I was having to take a sleep in the afternoon because I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping well. I was eating just to kind of give me what I thought was going to be energy to get me through the day. I wasn't being present for my clients, wasn't being present for my family. And I'm not someone who, I like to walk the talk. I like to be authentic. I like to represent to my clients a kind of model of what they can achieve if they're when they put the time and the consistency in. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that actually I needed to do something about this, because this wasn't where I wanted to be in terms of my own health. So I went to see my own nutritional therapist, and she said, well, first thing we've got to do is get your gut health sorted out, and then we'll look at at how you're fueling your body throughout the course of the day. And so we worked on supporting my gut health and repairing my gut health, which had been damaged by the antibiotics 3-4 years earlier. But then the next thing we really focused on was eating food for sustainable energy. And this really kind of lit a fire in me. I've always had a real passion for nutrition. But at the time I wasn't qualified as a nutritional therapist. And I was, as I said, really eating what I believed was going to give me the energy, and the things we've been told by the food industry, I believed was going to give me the energy, so I was eating the cereal bar in the afternoon because I thought that would pick up my energy levels. I was eating the sandwich at lunchtime because I thought I needed the complex carbohydrate to get me through the afternoon, because I was training clients and stuff like that. And actually what we did was we switched it up completely, and we took away certain things that I thought were giving me energy, which were actually sapping my energy. And at the time when she said to me, you need to take the sandwich and just have it as a salad and not have the bread, I was like, oh, how am I ever going to function? Where's the energy going to come from? And I was blown away by how much more energy I had when I didn't have that sandwich at lunchtime and I did have the big salad. And so I just started to really investigate it a little bit more. I wanted to understand it. I requalified as a nutritional therapist because I began this journey of really understanding how food was fueling my clients' bodies, and actually that I was focusing on the wrong things to help them get the results they were looking for. And gradually then I moved more and more away from training clients to actually coaching them in nutrition, and then became more and more specific around sugar, because particularly for a female who is 40 plus, the things that we used to do when we were younger, when our metabolism was higher and we could, we needed more energy, those things no longer work when you're 40 plus, when your hormones are changing and all that kind of thing. And actually insulin, the blood sugar hormone, is such a dominant hormone that unless we get it under control, it can wreak havoc. It can really wreak havoc. And so I thought, actually, really where I want to go, I was running a program, a 12-week program that I was launching with a sugar-free challenge. And that was the bit that I really enjoyed. I loved that bit. I loved empowering women to understand how much better they could feel without refined sugar in their life. And so gradually, more and more, I kind of went down this road of, actually, if we start with sugar and we make these small lifestyle changes and start to reduce the amount of carbohydrate that is not supporting our body. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we get rid of carbohydrate, but the amount of the carbohydrates that are not supporting our body, if we can remove those, then we can begin to live a more empowered, more vibrant life. And so that's really where I started with it. And that kind of came to fruition really in 2021. So I've been focusing as a sugar-free coach since 2021, and just helping women to initially dip their toe in the water to remove refined sugar and see how that makes them feel. And then if that makes them feel good, we go on a journey. I've got a program that's a 4-week program that is a journey of actually what are the methods that you need to then help you stay away from sugar long term. And I don't suggest to anyone that they become completely sugar-free, but I think, it's absolutely possible to live a 95% sugar-free life and still enjoy yourself. You don't have to have sugar to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's totally something we're conditioned into, to think that we need that reward in our lives. But let's first talk about, I feel like we all sort of understand, or like superficially know, that like sugar is not good for our blood sugar, and I mean, and we associate those two things. But beyond that, what does sugar really do to us at the biological and systemic level?
So if we understand, first of all, where we get our energy from, so I like to call it the glucose spectrum. So we've got carbohydrate that comes in the form of colorful carbohydrates in reds and greens and oranges, which is our fruit and vegetables. And then we've got on the other end of the spectrum, the sort of beiges and the whites being complex carbohydrates. We've been told they're complex, but actually they're man-made carbohydrates like pasta and bread. And then we've got the white, which would be, your table sugar, but equally as much your cookies, your biscuits, your cakes, and all those kind of things. And so on that spectrum, the body accesses the glucose, the metabolic process that the body goes through to access the glucose is the same for both, for wherever you're getting your glucose from, whether it's the colorful end or the beige and the white end. But the difference is, with the colorful end, those foods contain lots of antioxidants. So when the body goes through that metabolic process to release that glucose, it also releases byproducts that can cause inflammation. So that can set up inflammation in the body. But the colorful end of the spectrum has these antioxidants that will neutralize those byproducts and get rid of them out of the system, so they don't set up inflammation. If we're getting our carbohydrate from the beige and the white end of the spectrum, they don't contain the antioxidants in the same way. So that metabolic process that the body goes through can create inflammation, can create these byproducts that will create inflammation. And that can then lead to an internal stress. So that inflammation could be seen as joint pain. It could be even be seen as things like brain fog. It can be seen as IBS. All of those are forms of inflammation. And if that's where we're getting a lot of our carbohydrate from, that beige and white end, that's creating more and more inflammation in the body. It's causing more and more stress internally. And that then leads to the release of other hormones. It kind of leads to a cascade of hormones that can actually do quite a lot of damage long term.
Yes.
And so what we really want to understand is that actually we know that eating a cookie is no good for us, but we don't make that same association necessarily with bread or pasta. in how it can start to create inflammation in the body. And it's that inflammation that we really need to manage and get under control, because that's the start of the problems being of not only of our cravings for sugar, but also the start of a sort of gradual degradation of our long-term well-being. If we've got internal inflammation, what we call systemic inflammation, deep down inflammation, that is causing the body to be stressed internally.
Right, which, is driving those stress hormones, so cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Even if you're getting that dopamine high, which is the reward chemical from the sugar, from the sweet thing, or even maybe it's not quote unquote sugar, maybe it's bread or pasta. But again, it all comes down to sugar. Yeah. Or like you said, crispy potato chips in the US. Or fries. But it's it all comes down, and that's one of the things that I also try to reinforce with my clients too, is that it doesn't matter if it's a refined carb or a simple sugar or a complex carb. It all comes back to glucose.
Yeah.
So if you're constantly pumping your body full of a source of glucose, then your body's either going to use it and burn it, or it's going to store it.
Yeah.
Insulin is the storage hormone.
Yeah.
And for those of you that, aren't super, into the biology side of things, if sugar is not used, it is stored as fat. So that's why also, like you said, when, women 40 plus, our hormones start to change, things don't metabolize and, burn as quickly as they used to. And even with men too, your basal metabolic rate goes down as you age, so if you're eating the same way that you did when you were in your 20s and 30s, then unless you're still working out hardcore and are super active throughout the day, not just for your 20-minute HIIT session, then you're going to have a harder time keeping lean, losing weight, whatever your goal is, and staying healthy, because really what all you're doing is accumulating this inflammation and keeping that insulin cycle constantly pumping and working and storing the fat and dealing with these extra glucose molecules floating around in your body and eventually exhausting your pancreas, which leads to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
So,
and also I think for a female who is 40 plus, because her liver is doing so much work to manage hormone change, and the liver is the first place where we store excess glucose as glycogen. So if our liver is overworked with the glycogen, trying to store glycogen before it converts it to the fat, then that can then have a knock-on effect to how well you manage your menopause as well, or your perimenopause, and that can exacerbate those symptoms that you see as well. So not only do you see that weight gain, but also you see symptoms of menopause being more accentuated because your liver's not functioning efficiently. So there's a whole load of things going on that we really need to kind of, if we can remove the majority of the refined sugar, or the majority of the glucose that doesn't serve us, we can start to improve our health really quite quickly. Actually, you can see quite a quick result with people. Even in just 7 days, you can get people sleeping better. You can get them balancing their blood sugars much better, so that they can begin to see things more clearly, that mental clarity, little things that you can change in just 7 days that will make a big difference to how you feel about yourself, which then motivates you to take more action.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, just to add another layer of understanding to that liver aspect too, although our sex hormones are made in and around our sex hormones, they're used and digested and broken down and divvied up in other parts of the body. One of those main places is the liver.
Yeah.
So that whole link between our menopausal symptoms, and even just how our body is holding on to toxins in general, which can also keep us overweight.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to come back to our liver health. So, super important to keep that in mind. And even, if we're looking at the increased rates of fatty liver, of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, as they call it. So it's when your liver starts to look like on a scan more fatty even when you're not a drinker.
Yeah.
And so it starts to have that same look as a cirrhotic liver, but it's from a different mechanism.
Yeah.
And so that's a real consequence too right now in the Western world. Some people like to blame it all on our fast food culture, but I've seen plenty of older women that don't eat a lot of fast food, very minimal, and they still start to develop this fatty liver, and they come to me, they're like, why? Why, like, I don't have a history of this, like, I'm not a drinker, but why is that? And it's lifestyle, your stress
Yeah.
levels, it's your toxic burden load, and then how much sugar are you eating every
Yeah.
day?
Yeah.
And so that's why I like to use the word carb, because people think when you say sugar, I feel like they think sweets.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I don't drink a lot of soda, or I don't eat a lot of candy. But it's not just that. Like, how
Yeah.
much bread are you eating?
Yes.
How much pasta are you eating? Rice, all of the different ways that we incorporate carbs into our daily lifestyle.
Yeah, it's not just about adding it to a teaspoon to your cup of tea. It's all those other things, like, like I said originally, when the nutritional therapist said to me, stop eating the bread at lunchtime, that for me was an eye opener as to actually that is really contributing to my peaks and troughs in energy level, because it's not serving my blood sugar balance. It's not giving me consistent levels of insulin. It's not giving me consistent levels of glucose. It's spiking my glucose really quickly, and then it's crashing. And that's what's causing me to have to take a sleep in the afternoon. But because I wasn't, because I, like you said, with most of your clients, they're not eating, they don't think they're eating a load of sugar. I wasn't a chocolate eater or anything like that. But it was those things that I didn't really recognize as being something that wasn't something that was consistent for my blood glucose levels. It didn't provide me with consistent, steady blood glucose. And all of those things, I think a lot of it is to do with the food industry as it is now, and that they've kind of almost misguided us into thinking these things are healthy, we're going to be all right with this. But actually, in reality, they're far from healthy. I always say, if it says it's healthy on the label, it probably isn't, because it's having to protest. Right. It's having to create a protest to pretend that it is.
Right. Absolutely. So, okay, I think we've covered that base, and very good explanation. Now let's talk about cravings. And I sort of talked about dopamine a little bit earlier, but let's talk about like why we are so attached to the bread and we're so attached to our pastas.
Yeah.
Even not even really talking about the candy and the sweets factor, or the baked goods, but why are we so attached to this carb aspect of our life?
Well, it may be different for you over in the States, but for us here, it's a real history thing, because during the war, we didn't have a lot of carbohydrate, and we didn't have bread and all that kind of thing, and sugar. It was real something that was rationed. And so my parents in particular grew up with their parents saying, oh, you can't have that because we haven't got enough of it, or we can have this today as a treat. So the bread was a treat, or we didn't have pasta then, but the sugar, whatever it was a treat. The piece of cake was a treat. So it was seen as something that was really special. It was a bit of a reward. You had it because you'd obviously done something really well, or it was a special occasion, or what have you. And so our parents then, my parents, gave to our generation a bit of a kind of like, oh, it's a treat to have a really nice piece of bread, or a nice really nice pasta dish, and that kind of thing. And so as a result, it's been a handed down kind of almost belief, if you like, that these things are a treat for the body, which is fine if you're having it once a week. But if you're having it 3 or 4 times a day, that's a completely different kettle of fish. And as the food industry has changed over the last 60 to 70 years, and we've seen that onset of processed food, and we've seen that fast food kind of start to take over the home cooked foods and all those kind of things. The way we eat has changed, but our metabolism hasn't changed to keep up with it, basically. And so in this country in particular, the foods that we ate that we saw as comfort foods comes, I think, as a historical thing back from, the 1940s, when things were rationed and they weren't available as much. But I always say, so that craving for comfort foods, I think, is something that we've inherited historically. But I always say that cravings tend to be, I always think that cravings are, they happen based on what you first eat in the morning, basically, or whether the first thing that you eat will influence your cravings for the rest of the day. Because if you eat something that is sugary or cereal based, that's going to spike your blood sugars quite quickly because your stomach's full of hydrochloric acid. It's going to break down carbohydrate really quickly, the first thing that you eat. And so that results in quite a fast rush of glucose into the bloodstream and a fast rush of insulin being released in order to manage that blood glucose levels. So if you eat a cereal-based breakfast, which again, we've been told for years and years was the right way to start our breakfast, you know, and the most important meal of the day is breakfast, which actually there's no scientific evidence for that at all.
All marketing. It's all marketing.
It is all marketing. It all came from Mr. Kellogg and the fact that he wanted to just sell his cornflakes. But if you that first thing that you eat, if it's a cereal-based breakfast or a carbohydrate-based breakfast, a processed carbohydrate-based breakfast, it's going to spike your blood sugars really quickly, and that's going to result 2 hours later in a bit of a crash of blood sugars. And because your brain functions on glucose, your brain picks up this message, oh my goodness, blood sugars have dropped, we need to eat something, we need to eat something quickly, and that's when the craving kicks in. So not only have you got a dopamine hit from that comfort food, that feeling of, oh, it's okay, I'm giving myself something really nice, but then you've also got these cravings that sometimes are almost out of your control because your blood sugars crash, your brain perceives the need to eat something with high glucose levels in order to bring your blood sugars back up again. And so you get on this kind of blood sugar roller coaster throughout the course of the day. And so it becomes almost difficult to manage your cravings because your brain is overriding that feeling. And then plus if your intestine is full of good bacteria, or should be full of good bacteria. And if it's not full of good bacteria and it's full of yeast it needs to be activated using sugar. And so that direct link between your intestine and your brain, the vagus nerve, whatever's going on in your intestine is coming out in your brain. So if you've got an overgrowth of yeast in your intestine, it's going to be sending that message to your brain to consume more sugar. It's going to control your cravings to a certain extent. So I like to tell women that I work with that actually it's not about willpower. It's not about the fact that you think you haven't got any willpower, because we beat ourselves up and say, I can't do it, I haven't got any willpower. But actually it's not about willpower. It's just about understanding how to eat to get your blood sugars balanced. And when you can do that, then you can manage your cravings so much more efficiently.
Yes, I think caffeine feeds in with that too. I think we supplement those highs and lows.
Yeah.
Either feeding them in conjunction with caffeine or when we've crashed and we bring in more to help ourselves continue on or feel better. It's so interesting that you brought forward that whole historical and ancestral cultural history piece, because I don't think you can really deny that things that our family and our ancestors go through definitely conditions their response, and that's how they raise their children.
Yeah.
So for sure, like my grandmother grew up through the Depression, and so she was always, like save these bags, or saving things.
Make to amend.
Yes. But I think too, the other aspect of this whole food beyond the marketing is a huge piece, especially in the 20th century. It was sort of the advent, the first time we really ever had mass food marketing.
Yeah.
And they used the food pyramid in the United States, which again was really influenced by the food industry, not really based on a lot of good science at all, but more like which industries do we need to support and promote. And this is all post World War II, so it's post-war. So you could still argue that it is being based on this, this period of deprivation and scarcity and rationing, and now we're post-war, we have all this abundance. Now we have to use it. What are we going to do with it? We have to make sure people are eating and using it. And so we've been taught, like you said, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. What does that breakfast look like? It looks like toast and cereal and French toast and maybe some eggs and bacon and sausage or whatever. Maybe there's some protein in there, but it's mainly carbs, pancakes, biscuits. And if you're from the South of the United States, like I'm from, so So yeah, like really like almost like finding a way to use flour at every meal,
Yeah.
because that's what, and then on top of that, it's almost like they're admitting they know these grains don't have the nutrients that we need because they're fortifying them
Mm,
with
mm,
B vitamins and
yeah,
vitamin D. And it's like,
yeah,
well,
and zinc or
if
whatever.
yeah, if they had everything that we needed, would you really need to be
Yeah,
fortifying them?
yeah, 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 exactly. And then
So
if you add into that as well time pressure, so this kind of you know, time poor individuals who are working hard but have got cash, they're gonna be doing anything that's making it easy for them to get some fuel into their system. And so they'll stop and get a Starbucks and a muffin or whatever it is. They'll stop and get something on their way into the office and what have you. And that just fuels the problem even further, because not only is it then, even because if you're having toast, at least you have toast, you could put some nut butter on it, something to kind of add the protein to it. But if you're just having something sugary like a muffin for breakfast with a coffee, that is just gonna accelerate this kind of fast influx of glucose into your bloodstream, which is going to crash and then peak again and crash, and all of a sudden you're just this whole kind of stressed lifestyle is to a large extent being fueled as well by the fact that we're just not eating properly. So much easier to manage stress if you're fueling your body properly than it is if you're just on this blood sugar roller coaster. And so we become less productive through the day because we're on a blood sugar roller coaster. But then, so that puts even more pressure on us, and we think we need to do more. So we'll grab something quickly on our way home because we haven't got time to cook. And, so all of that is adding to this whole. It's not just about, like you say, the sugar that we think is the problem. It's all these other things that we might not necessarily associate with sugar that are just causing our blood glucose levels to go massively out of balance.
Yeah. And I love that you brought forward also to the yeast and the candida aspect within our guts. There are certain ways to tell if you have a candida overgrowth. If you are overtly having signs and symptoms of any sort of yeast infection exuding from any part of your body, whether it's your feet, your oral cavity, your vaginal cavity, any of that, then it stands to reason that you have a yeast overgrowth problem internally also. So I think that's important, because a lot of people, I think there's this disconnect of like, well, how do I know?
Yeah.
But I think too, like if you're having sort of these insatiable, crazy cravings, like when you try to stop, I think that's a good signal that there is something that's out of balance within your microbiome, because it really, like when you sort of start cutting back and getting cognizant and maybe not. I also too don't like to think about it as like just abstaining and cutting it out, but like you're really rebalancing, like you alluded to also. So you're adding in the appropriate amount of healthy fats. You're adding in the appropriate amount of protein for your body, which I think is also really important to understand. It should be about 1 gram per ideal body weight. An ideal body weight is not like the weight that you like to be or that you want to be or that you feel best at. It's an actual like nutritional calculation. So you can look that up, ideal body weight. Anyway, so making sure you get enough protein, good fats. And then, like you mentioned, that those carbs that you are having are coming from vegetables, that it's colorful, it's leafy. And then examining, how do I feel? Is my body saying, have a dessert or have a sweet coffee or have something after? Like, if it's triggering you, especially after those first few days, like I think it's kind of normal to sort of like having to retrain our brain for probably like, what do you think, like the first 3 to 5, up to 7? What's your thought on that?
I found some clients can take up to 10 days, but most clients are within that sort of 4 to 5 day period where they can really start to see that they're able to resist the sweet cravings, or they're able to resist the snacking in between, because their blood sugars are starting to come back into balance. It doesn't take long. It really doesn't take long.
Yeah. So you just need to tell yourself no, resist a little for like the first week at most on average. Yeah. Have water, have some sort of like, I think peppermint tea is really great because it's calming to the gut, but it also sometimes gives your brain that that little bit of false sense of sweetness sometimes.
Yeah. Or
So
licorice and peppermint is a really nice combination because it's
mhm.
good for digestion, but it's got that sweeter taste to it. So it can be enough sometimes just to kind of fulfill that little sweetness that I need, that then moves me on from that meal and I'm done, kind of thing.
Yes, but if your cravings again are like really powerful and continuing beyond that, then I think it's maybe like worth exploring some sort of candida protocol.
Yeah.
Like something to evaluate and like sort of re-inoculate and rebalance the microbiome, and you probably will notice a quick turnaround from that point. If
Sorry, I lost you there.
That's okay. Yeah, I know. So we were a little unstable. Okay. So what else? Do you have any other tips that like can help us break out of that cycle?
Yeah. So the first thing is to always think about, what am I eating for breakfast? Make sure my breakfast is more of a protein and healthy fats based breakfast. So, that's where you would go eggs and avocado and that kind of thing for breakfast. That's what I would always start a client. Let's just focus on your breakfast first of all. And then I like to get them to think about eating something green and fibrous before their main meal. So that could be something like, a small side salad before you eat your main meal, in order to provide the fiber, which will slow down the release of glucose into the bloodstream. So focus first on what you're eating the first thing in the day, and make sure that meal is taking you from one meal to the next, so you're not having to snack. And that might need you to tweak it. It might need you to tweak that meal to make sure there's a bit more protein in there, or a little bit more healthy fats, and maybe some nuts and stuff like that. But that first meal should get you from that first meal all the way through to the next one, 4 to 5 hours, something like that, without even thinking about food, without even thinking about the fact that you need to snack on something. If your blood sugars are really nicely balanced, you won't even be, food won't even feature. You won't even be kind of going, oh, I'm hungry after 2 hours. If you're hungry after 2 hours, the food you're eating is not working for you from a blood sugar balance point of view. So get your breakfast right first. Once your breakfast is right, and you can go for a good 4 to 5 hours before your next meal. When I say breakfast, I mean the first thing that you eat, because not everybody wants to eat breakfast, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. Don't have a problem with that. But it's got to be the first thing you eat needs to keep you going for a good 4 to 5 hours to the next meal. And then that next meal, make sure that you're having some kind of salad based, or some kind of greenery before you eat the main meal, because that's going to give you the fiber that is going to help you to almost line your stomach, essentially, for want of a better term, that slows the release. It acts like a bit like a sieve to slow the release of the glucose down. So that's my second tip. And then the third thing is, and I do this a lot with clients, is I say the kitchen is closed at 7 o'clock. If you haven't eaten before 7 o'clock, don't eat afterwards. Don't be going around the kitchen trying to find things to eat, because when you go to bed, if your insulin levels are high, that's going to impact your quality of sleep. And there is lots of research to show that your insulin levels will reset through the course of the night. So you want to go into deep sleep so that your insulin levels can reset, and you're starting on the front foot again the following morning. So just that kind of kitchen is closed, but there's no more food. It's not a restriction. It's just, I'm closing the kitchen. I don't like clients to focus on not what I can't have. I like them to just kind of focus on all the things they can have, all the good quality stuff, all the colors, etc., etc. But then as soon as we get to that 7 o'clock, kitchen is closed, we're done, kind of thing. And then by the time you go to bed, your insulin levels will be coming down, which means you'll get a better quality sleep, which means they'll reset again for the following day. And that's a really useful tip. If you're someone who is really trying to get your blood sugars balanced, really try that the kitchen is closed at 7 o'clock approach, because then you can utilize your sleep and the healing impact that sleep has to help you speed up that balancing of blood sugars and that balancing of your insulin, and to bring your insulin levels down.
What is your opinion of intermittent fasting, or are you strongly opinionated about it?
So strongly opinionated is maybe a bit too strong. I actually really like to fast. I do like to fast. I find it really beneficial for my own well-being. I will do a kind of eating window So I will do an 11 till 7 eating window most days, not every day, but that works for me. I find that's really good for my digestion. I find it's really good for my blood sugar balance. And I've also found that it's been really good for sort of easy weight management and stuff. And so I do encourage clients to think about doing that eating window, but it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, particularly if kind of restriction triggers you because you've had some kind of, a history of eating disorders or things like that. So it's important to really just be mindful. If you're going to go down that road, just get a little bit of advice around it first of all to really understand whether it's going to work for you. And if you do want to do it, I would say, try maybe doing a 10 till 8 eating window first of all, and then bringing it back in. But there is lots of evidence to show that you bring your insulin levels down, and you kind of, you get all those different metabolic processes kicking in to clean up the cells and to, to really help you with your energy levels. And so, yeah, and from a hormone balance point of view as well. So I don't personally have a problem with it, but I know some people it doesn't work for them. So it's each to their own, really.
Yes, love it. Well, tell everyone where they can find you.
So you can go to thesugarfreecoach.com and you can find my website, or you can find me on Instagram as Sue Thomas, the Sugar Free Coach, and the same on Facebook as well, and actually on LinkedIn as well. So if you just put in the Sugar Free Coach, you're pretty much going to find me.
And you have a signature program as well that you wanted to tell everyone
about.
So
my signature program is the 4-week sugar-free method, and that program is 4 weeks of focusing on nutrition, sleep and mindset, and helping those people that go through that program. It's all online, but we do have live calls as well. But it's the whole point of that program is to give you the tools to be able to balance your blood sugars and stay long term. So have the right mindset, the right tools in place to be able to keep your blood sugars balanced long term, and then to achieve everything that you seek to achieve, whether it's to look good in your dress when you go to your son's wedding, or whether it's to just have more energy to chase after your kids kind of thing. That program, that 4-week sugar-free method, will teach you everything you need to know to balance your blood sugars long term, and it gets great results. It really does.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sue. This has really been a pleasure. I love talking about this stuff, of course. So especially with the clients that I work with that are struggling either with insulin resistance, prediabetes, or full-blown type 2 diabetes. There's a lot of re-education that I feel like that we're doing. So I love talking to other practitioners that are doing similar things and just hearing like what's working for them, what's your approach. So I love that you're seeing such good success, that you're helping so many people. That's really exciting. So everybody check out Sue on her website, on the socials. We will have these links in our show notes page at drlaramay.com/podcasts. And again, thank you, Sue. It's been a real pleasure, and we appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lara. I really appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode.